I've been working in this shed for coming up to 18 months now, and I thought it was finally time to show you guys around. But so you get the whole picture, I have to take you right back to the start of the channel. The year was 2018 and I was a real novice at making YouTube videos. I had a small bedroom office that I made badly produced videos in, but I had a dream. A dream of a proper space to call my own, somewhere I could have a permanent YouTube setup and a place to call home. But I thought it would be years before I was in a position to be able to afford one. Then one day I found a listing on Facebook for an old summer house for free. It was roughly the right size to fit in the garden, and yes, it needed a lot of work and some serious muscle to move it, but I went for it. And with the help of my parents and parents-in-law, we managed to get it down and move it to its final resting place. Then the real work started. Building foundations, repairing damage to the old structure, and giving her a new roof. Finally, the structure was up, but there was a problem. I'd run out of money. I'd spent everything on moving the thing, so I furnished it with freebies off of Facebook, which didn't really fit the space, and so the inside never really met my expectations. I moved things around and made changes almost daily, but I was getting really annoyed and frustrated with how bad it looked in general. At the start of 2020, I thought, right, that's it, enough is enough, time to sort this place out. Before we go any further, I just want to say a huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Soundstripe. I've used Soundstripe for years and their library of music is second to none. All the music in this video is from Soundstripe and they've kindly offered a 15% discount to all of my subscribers using the promo code CWM15 on checkout. There's a link in the video description. So in this video, I'm going to go through every aspect of this space. How much did it cost to build, what technology I'm using, and most importantly, was building it the right thing to do? All the sections are time-coded in the video description, so if you want to skip to a certain section, feel free. Strap yourselves in because this is going to be a long one. Let's start with the structure itself. It's 6 by 4 meters and it's just about big enough for what I want to use it for, but if I had the choice I would have added a meter on either side of it, but as it turns out this is pretty much as big as it could be and still fit in the garden. We were on a pretty tight budget when building the space because we only bought our house 6 months earlier. With this in mind, we tried to reuse or repair anything we possibly could. Nothing went to waste in this build, including the decking that was outside where it used to reside. This is now the cladding on one of the walls, and I think it looks pretty good. I use a combination of gas and electric to heat it up in here, and there are plans to put a small wood burner in at some point. Two of the main factors I thought about when planning this space were electrics and internet. So we decided to dig a huge trench from the main house out to the shed so that we could have electrics and wired internet installed properly. And I'm really happy we did this, as internet is such a big part of my workflow, and if we'd gone down a different route, I would have been really annoyed. On a good day, I get 450 meg download and 30 up, which is pretty incredible for being this far into the Wiltshire countryside. So how much did it actually cost, and is it viable to build one yourself? Well, I had the best help anyone could ask for. Both Rachel's dad and my dad helped immensely, and without them, there would be no structure here at all. It would still just be a pipe dream. We spent £500 on actually moving the thing, roughly £1,000 on repairs and new interior walls, £500 on a new roof, £300 on a new steel reinforced door, and £600 on having the electrics installed. So all in all, we had invested just short of £3,000 on the actual building. Not bad considering if you were going to build something like this from scratch, it would cost closer to £10,000. Let's move on to the interior. Before spending a penny on remodeling the interior, I made a 3D mock-up of what I wanted the final space to look like on Google SketchUp. I planned where I wanted my YouTube setup to go, where I wanted to wall mount my monitors, and how much worktop I needed to create what was currently a vision only in my head. Doing this not only meant that I knew where everything was going to fit, but also how much I was going to spend down to the penny. The standout feature of the interior is the desk. I looked at loads of different options when it came to choosing the desk. I looked at using old scaffold boards, buying ready-made desks, but in the end decided to go for the worktop because 1, I knew it would fit perfectly in the space, 2, it would eliminate any glare off the table itself when I was doing overhead shots, and 3, it was going to look awesome. There's 8 meters of total desk space, which is more than anyone could ever need. The drawers that the countertop is sat on are IKEA Alex drawers and did end up being more expensive than I anticipated because I intended to buy them secondhand, but in the end had to buy them new. There are 5 sets of drawers in total. Something the old space was desperately missing was storage. So when I redesigned the space, I made sure that there was going to be ample storage for all of my needs. Along the back wall, there are 2 IKEA units with fabric boxes which fit all of my rarely used gear very nicely, and I think they look good too. The chairs I decided to go for are a generic ergonomic solution from Amazon. I essentially wanted something white, comfy, and a chair. Nothing too fancy, but ones which would fit nicely with everything else in here. Let's now move on to what I think is the heart and the soul of this space: the computer. I was a Mac user for the longest time, and for a couple of years whilst I was at uni, I even worked at the Apple store. But when it came time to upgrade a few years back, I just couldn't justify the cost of speccing up a Mac with what I required, so I decided to move to PC. To be honest, I've never looked back. So the PC specs for anyone that's interested: I've got a Ryzen 3900X processor, GTX 1070 graphics card, 32GB of RAM, 256GB SSD, and a 12TB hard drive. It's an absolute powerhouse and copes with anything I throw at it, and because I built it myself, I've got the confidence to upgrade components as and when I need to. On to monitors. People ask me questions about them all the time, so hopefully all your questions will be answered now. The 3 monitors above my ultra-wide are just old 1080p monitors which I've had for years, and you might have noticed them in the beginning when I showed my very first YouTube video. They'll probably need upgrading at some point, but I'm a great believer in using things until they break, so for now, they're doing just fine. I mounted them on a wall by taking apart a cheap triple monitor arm from Amazon and drilling directly through the arms into the decking wall. One thing that I really wanted to be able to do in this shed was mount anything, anywhere. The structure consists of a stud wall construction, and this just wouldn't cut it, so I put 12mm plywood on all of the walls except for the decking wall. Now I can attach what I need where I need it. The ultra-wide is an electric 49-inch super ultra-wide QLED monitor, and it's amazing. I reviewed it on my channel about a year ago, and it makes for such a nice editing workflow. I've put a link to the review in the video description. On either side of the monitor, I've got monitoring speakers which I upgraded to this year, and it's one of the best decisions I've made. They're Focal Alpha 50s which were recommended to me by a friend, and they sound great. I upgraded from some old Behringer ones, and it makes a huge difference when it comes to mixing my audio. I still use an old Scarlett 2i2 second generation audio interface, which I bought when I started uni over 10 years ago now, but it's still chugging away and doing a fine job. The only annoyance I have is that I can't track live audio due to the latency, but I can live with that for the time being. Okay, on to my favourite topic. Cameras. I'm surprised it's taken me this long in the video to talk about them. Let's start things off with my main YouTube camera. This one right here. This is the Sony a6400, which I bought a couple of months ago and I totally love. I've always been a Sony APS-C kind of guy, but the a6400 blows my mind. It's mains powered using a dummy battery, and I've got the output going into my Atem Mini, which is just here, out of shot, so I can monitor what I'm recording on a 27-inch BenQ monitor on the back wall. The camera is mounted on a Manfrotto Magic Arm for two reasons. One is that I never have to move it. I can position it just the way I want to and leave it there set up. And the second is that tripods are awesome, but they take up so much floor space. I want to be able to get behind this YouTube desk, and if there's a tripod there, I'm just going to knock it every time and wreck the positioning. This is the setup I use for every single one of my videos, and I also have another a6400 which is mounted up there for my overhead rig, which we're going to talk about shortly, but let's stick to cameras for the moment. I've also got a Sony a6500, two Sony a6300s, and a Fujifilm X-T3. You might be wondering why one person needs so many cameras, but to be honest, the answer's simple. I was getting fed up with having to de-rig my YouTube setup every single time I had to go and shoot a job, so decided to bite the bullet last year and bought the two a6400s so they could live permanently in this space. I've also got a variety of gimbals, sliders and GoPros, but I'm not going to go into that at the moment. If you're liking the footage from this video, watch out for my review of the Moser Slipod E, which is what I use to film all of the sequences in the new shed. On to lenses. For the YouTube camera, I use a Sigma 16mm 1.4, which has been my favourite lens ever since it arrived. I also own the Sigma 30mm 1.4, the Sony 50mm 1.8, the Viltrox 85mm 1.8, the Sony 18-105 f4, the Viltrox 23mm 1.4, and a load of old vintage lenses. My most used lenses are the Sigma 16mm and the Sigma 30mm, both cracking lenses. On to lighting, and I get a lot of questions about this as well. So let's start with the YouTube setup. My main key light, which is just here out of shot, it's the newer SL60W with a big Godox softbox. I think it's probably about 1 meter wide. It's absolutely massive. I'll put the link to that as well as everything I've talked about in this video in the video description. I've tried out other lights, but nothing ever looked as good as this, and it's also a bargain at just over £150. This has been my main key light for the past 6 months, and I've got no plans to upgrade it in the future. Just up to my left, usually out of shot, I've got the Sakani X60, which is again a really nice light at an affordable price, but I only use this for product shots. I've got it mounted on one of the cross beams in the ceiling, which means I can get it high enough that you guys can't see it for this shot, but I can also move it down for when I want a really even overhead light for product shots. Also, whilst it's on the screen, I have a turntable which I use for most of my videos. It's 60 centimeters across, which makes it ideal for filming products with some movement in. Back to lights. Above my desk, up there, I have an extremely cheap continuous light and softbox from Amazon. I think it was about 18 quid. I used to use this all the time, but since getting my newer SL60W, it just wasn't getting used anymore, so I ended up mounting it up there for Zoom calls and just so it wasn't taking up valuable space down here. Something I have noticed along the way is that the light coming out of it is very green compared to my other lights, so I wouldn't really recommend it. There will not be a link in the video description for that. Again, mounted in the rafters of the shed, I like to keep stuff up there out of the way. I have a cheap LED power can which I use for background ambient lighting sometimes. When it first arrived, it was really noisy, so I ended up taking the fan out of it, so I never leave this light on very much, but it's great to have a light in the ceiling which allows me to add colour to different scenes with ease. Whilst we're talking about things that are up in the rafters, I also have a rack up there which me and my dad built to hold all of my tripods, monopods, lighting stands, get them up there and out the way. On to practicals. I've got 6 little LED spotlights around the shed which are purely there for aesthetics, but when I'm in here editing alone I always have them on. I don't know why, but I seem to thrive much better in a darker environment than in a bright one, so I just have the blinds down and these soft lights on and it makes it feel all cozy. Finally, I have some cheap strip lights mounted on the beams. Alexa, turn on strip lights, so that if I ever need to find something quickly, I can, but they're really bright and I've got no control over the power, so these are just used as a last resort. All of the lights and the computer are controlled by Alexa, so I can turn it all on and off with a voice command. Alexa, turn off shed. Well, that worked. Last but not least, I want to talk about my overhead setup, which I'm super proud of. It started out life as yet another desk-mounted monitor arm, and I got the idea from DSLR video shooter to use it to mount a camera and a microphone on. I'm currently using the Rode NTG2, which runs up to the ceiling and then directly down the wall into my computer via the Scarlett 2i2. I've played around with recording audio in so many different ways, including plugging the mic directly into the camera, into the Atem Mini, using lapel mics, but this is by far the best option for both quality and reliability. I love this mic. Above the mic, I've got a Sony a6400 with the 18-105 f4 lens currently, and again this is powered by a dummy battery and has a 10-meter long HDMI cable running out of it and into the Atem Mini, so I can monitor exactly what the shot looks like. Again, I've played with many different overhead options, but this one just works. So would I recommend building a monstrous shed in your garden, kitting it out to the gills and using it as a YouTube studio? It's been 100% the most fun thing I have ever done in my life, but not for the faint of heart. This structure has been 2 years in the making to get it to this point, but I've loved every single minute of it. So if you really want something like this, yes, it can be done, and yes, getting the structure for free in the first place really helped, but it still took a lot of work to get it like this. I think that's everything. I haven't talked about my CCTV, I haven't talked about the alarm, I haven't talked about the wood storage in the ceiling or the fridge over there or the charging station. I will be making another video about the charging station, but I think that's everything for this video, and if you've stuck around for that long, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this longer style video. It's taken me almost a week to put it together, which is much longer than usual, but I hope it answers some of the questions you have about my setup. If you've got any more questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the comment section below and I'll get back to you, or join my Facebook group. There's a link in the video description. If you like this video, please give it a like, and if you're new here, why not subscribe? Thanks again to Soundstripe for sponsoring this video. Go check them out at the link in the video description, and I'll see you again really soon.